Hey there guys, I've been seeing so many of these phones coming in with the red sticker, and I'm just going to start doing some videos called how to save some money with your iPhone data recovery. This phone is from John, and he gave us permission to record his repair for YouTube. So let's jump in and see if we can save John. He was quoted $4,000. $4,000 from our buddies over at Drivesavers. Let's see if we can get this 13 Pro Max fixed for a lot less than that. I'm going to start by taking the phone apart. Complaint is just that it doesn't turn on, and he went to a couple shops that told him, hey, it just can't be fixed. Then he sent it to Drivesavers, and now it's here. So let's dive in. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is take out all the screws, shields, and I'm going to take the logic board out of the phone. All right, I'm going to go ahead and warm this up and take out the battery so that we can get the logic board out. All right, a little bit of alcohol to get this battery out. Now that it's nice and warmed up, this should come right out. There we go. All right, the only thing left holding this guy in there is the 5G antenna, which is why we had to take the battery out. So we're going to gently pry this board out. And there we go. Here is our logic board. All right, the data is here on the logic board. In order to get it out though, we got to figure out why does this logic board not boot up. So we're going to put it on the DC power supply and see if we can get a hint. Hi, we see a little bit of a leaky current, about 260 milliamps. That's not normal, but it also isn't typical of a short circuit on the main power rail, so something else is going on. We're going to have to get out our multimeter and go for a hunt to see if we can figure out why is there current leaking to ground. All right, I've got the sticker off, I've got our multimeter out, and I'm just going to start probing around and see if anything jumps out at me. I'm going to park my red probe on ground and in diode mode. Let's see. I can tell from some of the way these test points look, I can see which ones are supposed to be ground. This one is not supposed to be, I don't know, probably more than 0. What is this one? 0.5 seems normal. What is this one? Oh well, could be normal. I'm looking for something that is low, something that is allowing the electricity to go to ground. This one I can tell is ground because it has no border around it. And 0 ohms to ground. 0.5, 0.6, that seems normal. And then right here, 0.1. 0.1, that seems low to me. I'm going to see if I can guess what kind of a circuit this little test point is for. Remember, the 13 series doesn't have a schematic, so we have to just go by a little bit of experience. So let's go ahead and look at the board view, which we do have, and see if we can guess what circuit this test point might be for, and if it is indeed actually low at 0.1. All right, here's our trusty ZXW, and if we zoom in, we can see there's our little test point here, but it's not labeled with anything that has any meaning because there's no schematic for the 13 series. So what is this for? Let's see if we can guess. We can look at the board view overall and see, oh, this is the main power rail. Check this out. I can see that we have the lit up in red all over the board, lots of different places. This is what a main power rail looks like, and we can see that it feeds in multiple times to what we already know is the power chip, U3300. This is the main power rail. Now, I know from having worked on some 13 series before, there's some videos on my channel, one I fixed where the board was broken at the end. I remember that the main power rail is supposed to be the normal value of about 0.3. So 0.1, when it's supposed to be 0.3, is indeed a partial short to ground. There is a leak to ground somewhere on main, but where? Where is there a chip or a capacitor that's allowing this energy to just go to ground for free without having to go through all the circuitry and turn the phone on? Something is wrong. We have to find that. We're going to use our trusty thermal camera, but we're not going to be able to see anything on this board as it is now because, like we can tell over here at ZXW, the majority of the candidates, chips, components, capacitors that are on the main power rail, the majority of them are inside the 2 layers of our 13 Pro Max. So next step is heat up and separate the 2 layers of this logic board and see if we can get to the bottom of this problem. All right, we're going to heat up our preheater until we can separate the top from the bottom layer of the 13 Pro Max, and then we'll be able to see whether our short circuit is on the top side, which we will have to solve, or is it on the bottom side, which we don't have to solve to get the data. We could just put the top board on top of a known good bottom board because the bottom board is just RF function. It's not anything that has to do with actually decrypting the information that's stored encrypted on the NAND. So let's heat this up, separate the layers, and see which side of the board our problem is on. Might be ready to separate. Let's see. Yep. All right, there we go. Perfect. Now let's figure out where is our partial short on the main power rail. Is it here on the bottom board or is it on the top board? Okay, let's head back to the multimeter and flip this guy, and we're going to take that same reading right here at our test point, and ooh, now we get 0.3. That's normal. So that tells us that our bottom board, the one that we actually don't need for data recovery, is fine. So our short circuit must be up here on the top board. So let's go ahead and see if we can find what component on here is getting hot. And that is likely going to be the cause of our leaking electricity to ground. Let's see if we can find it with the thermal camera. I'm going to clean the board up a little bit, take off the thermal paste before we start looking for our short, just to keep it neat. Okay, I've got our DC power attached to just the top board, and we're going to look at that inner layer, the side of the top board that we couldn't see when the whole phone was together, when both sides of the logic board were together. And I'm going to connect up the DC power supply so that we can see what is getting hot. All right, looking around, the white is hot. Oh, that is a very clear answer. Let's look around to make sure we're not missing anything. But we can see right there, that is the power management chip. And usually that is bad news because the power management chip doesn't just go bad. When I see that, that means that something really heavy was dropped on this phone, likely like a weight in a gym. Something has cracked that chip. Let's see if we can see the crack with our eyes if we look under the microscope right there at the power management chip. Look at that. Tap, tap, tap. That's our short for
Okay,
sure.
let's see if we can see the crack. Ooh, I can see the crack. Look at that. Let me put a little alcohol on it and let me flip and kind of twist this board here under the microscope so that you can see that there is a giant crack right across the power management chip. No doubt that this is the cause of our short circuit. It's right here. As this evaporates off, usually that will kind of highlight the spot. Look at that.
Do you see it? Look at that. It's a full crack. In fact, it's a little bit shattered right there. Let's drill down, twisting it a little bit back and forth. Look at that. You can see a
Big crack right across this chip, and then a smaller crack, a little horizontal crack. It's just been pulverized.
This is some trauma. This is like an object kind of getting hammered into the phone right here. That is a little bit weird because there's not matching damage on the housing. A little bit of a mystery. All this looks clean. I don't know, John. I don't know how you got a giant crack in your power management chip, but that's the problem at hand. So in order to get the data off of this chip, off of this board, we're going to have to get it to turn on. This chip is going to have to supply power to the CPU, the NAND, and the EEPROM to decrypt the data. There's no other way about it. We're going to have to get that chip off safely without damaging anything else. And then we're going to have to come up with a replacement and get that back on. So let's go ahead and try to blast off this chip. Check out my blast off video that I made. This is my new technique on how to remove underfilled chips that are really have tight clearance. Let's go for it. All right, we're ready to go for the blast off method.
This is really the biggest challenge for this job. I've got to get this chip
Off by heating it up enough to melt the solder so that it can release from the pads below, but I can't heat up anything else around the chip. It's very sensitive to heat
all around here because of that glue, that underfill.
All right, let's go for it.
Coming off in pieces.
There we go.
Woo!
All right, I think I got that off safely, and now it's time to clean up underneath, clean all the glue out from under the chip. Beautiful. Now let's go ahead and use our multimeter and make sure that our short is actually gone and that there's not a second problem with our main power rail. Let's find a good place that we can measure. Let's measure, how about right on the headlights of this capacitor that's down here underneath our now missing chip. There we go, 0.3. So we have 0.3 on both our top board and our bottom board. That means that we don't have a short to ground, a leak to ground on our main power rail anymore. But of course, this phone is not going to boot up because it can't create any of the dozens and dozens of power rails without its power management chip. So we're going to have to get a new power management chip and put it on. Now that's a little bit of a challenge because this is an Apple proprietary chip. So we will have to get this chip from China. And the magic of the internet, it's a few days later and I have a brand new PMU for our iPhone 13 Pro Max. So let's go ahead and open it up, take a look at it. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually re-ball it. Yep, there's the chip with the marker on the Apple logo straight from China. Look at that. Can you see that? There's a marker so that it can pass customs. God, can you believe that that is what it has come to for the right to repair, that you can't import a chip to replace a cracked chip without having to deal with this marker, paint, or whatever it is. All right, what I'm going to do first with this guy is I'm going to delete the factory soldered balls that are on here. Let me show you these guys. This one, let me see if this one, if I need to delete it. I'm going to check to see what temperature is the solder on these balls. Let me just heat it up a little bit instead. So the only place that these chips really can come from is another iPhone 13 Pro Max that presumably is not working for some reason other than the PMU. This one doesn't have a crack in it, so that's an improvement. Let's go ahead and put some heat on this. I set my heat down kind of low to see whether or not I can liquefy the solder. Nope. All right, so I think that this has been reballed in China, but I want to reball it myself. So before I put this chip on John's board, I'm going to delete all of these solder balls and I'm going to apply fresh solder balls. That dark inky looking stuff is the paint, the annoying paint that has to be on there to import these chips from China into the United States. So we'll clean all that off. There's our Apple logo. And here's our chip ready for us to put a stencil, solder paste, and make fresh, low temperature solder balls. There we go. So zen, relaxing.
All right, here's our chip ready to go. If you like the look of reballing, it is absolutely just as fun as it looks. Come learn how to do it. You can come visit us at iPad Rehab in person for our training classes once a month. Check us out at iPadRehab.com, click training. Come visit us. Reballing chips, that is what we do the afternoon of day one. All right, let's go for it. All right, that's on there. Now I'm gonna let it cool all the way down, and then I'm gonna get out the multimeter so that I can check to see, do I have a short on my main power rail? Because the main power rail plugs into this chip so many times. If the chip is a little bit sideways, or if two balls are bridged together, it'll probably create a main short. So I always like to test with a multimeter before putting electricity into the board. All right, here's my rule. If you can touch it, you can test it. Yeah, I can touch it. All right, let's go ahead and take that main power line reading. 0.3, there we go. We have cleared our partial short on main. We have replaced our cracked power management chip. And now it's time to see, will John's board boot up? So let's get some parts out and give it a test. Okay, let's get this connected. We'll plug in just a screen, a dock, and a battery. Okay, and this is just the old housing. This is John's screen, and we're gonna prompt it to boot or get it to turn on by connecting it to a regular lightning cable on a charge port. All right, this is the moment of truth. All right, let's see. Ooh, I see charging current and I see an Apple logo. All right, this is the most nerve-wracking moment where it might boot loop and we have bigger fish to fry. But I think it's gonna boot. If the power management chip can make all of the power rails necessary for it to produce an Apple logo, it probably doesn't have anything else wrong, and it's going to boot up. Yay! There we go. And John did give us permission to. There we go. We have access to all of his data. This is fantastic news for John. He had a really difficult and challenging problem, but it wasn't a $4,000 problem. So thank goodness he declined his $4,000 quote. He sent it over here. And John, you just saved thousands of dollars, man. Thousands of dollars you saved, and you're still gonna get back your data. So fantastic. I just love stories like this. I love being able to help people save, gargantuan amounts of money on their data recovery. I know that John had gone to Verizon and he'd gone to Best Buy, and it was finally folks at YouBreak that said, you know what, you should go check out iPad Rehab. And John, I'm really glad you did, and I hope that you do something amazing this summer with the thousands of dollars that you saved by not sending your phone to Drivesavers. So there you go. That was a tough one, and I will see you guys on the next one.